All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Friday, everybody. We're actually releasing this on Saturday, but we're recording it on Friday, which is very important for the standings that we're going to be discussing today. We're having the guys from Nerd Sesh on, a show I'm very, very excited about. We're going to do a deep dive into the play-in tournament in both conferences. I'm going to give you guys some numbers just based on the strength of schedule and where teams are in the standings. Then we'll have a little bit of a discussion on where we expect things to land and where we hope things to land. After that, we're going to do a little bit of a touch on the contenders at the top of the league. And then after that, I have a fun game for the nerds at the end of the show where we're going to go over some of my favorite bad takes from this season. So this a little bit of an early start for you guys this morning, you Gen Zers. I could tell you're a little sleepy. I can see it in your eyes, Carson. I could see it in the energy.
Well, I'm getting over
little
a
late
sickness,
to the Zoom call.
Jayson. I'm getting over a sickness. That's a bit insensitive of you.
Anyway, we're going to start out in the Western Conference. So as a quick synopsis, we have kind of three tiers in the West play-in tournament. The Pelicans are currently at the 5 seed. They are at 27 losses after a loss last night to the Orlando Magic. Also, Brandon Ingram hyperextended his knee. He's going to be out at least 2 weeks, heading into a pretty tough stretch of their schedule as well. They are at 27 losses, ninth toughest remaining schedule, 52% opponent winning percentage. Then we have the Mavericks, the Suns, and the Kings. They're all tied with 29 losses, so 2 more than the Pels. The Mavs have a 48% opponent winning percentage in their remaining schedule, which is the 9th easiest. The Suns, 57.4%. The Kings at 56% opponent win percentage is the 3rd toughest remaining schedule in the league. So Suns and Kings, both really tough schedules. Probably worth mentioning, though, that this time of year, the toughness in the schedule, a lot of it has to do with where it's loaded, because once you get into that last week or so, even some of the top teams in the league start sitting guys. Then we go to the Warriors and the Lakers at 32 losses, so 3 behind the Mavericks, Suns, and Kings, both of them at 32, 17th and 18th toughest remaining schedules, respectively, with a 48% opponent win percentage. So let's get started here. We'll start with you, Carson. What is your best guess for how the standings land from here in the play?
So I think that we're probably going to end up with the 4 teams who are currently in the play-in, still in the play-in. A little bit boring, maybe. I think that the Pelicans are in some risk of falling now that they don't have BI, but they've honestly played pretty well without him this year. And he's had a really good season, so I don't want to diminish what he brings: scoring, playmaking, improved defense. But they're 4-2 without him. I still think they maintain that really elite defensive identity no matter what. And they've gotten a really good version of Zion lately. So I think just for this very short stretch with the advantage they have in the standings, they can probably hold on. But then with the Kings and the Suns, I just think they do have really tough schedules, as you laid out. Specifically Phoenix, I mean, it's ridiculous. They have games remaining versus the Nuggets. They have 2 left versus New Orleans, which is maybe a little bit easier without BI, but that's still a tough, physical, defensive-minded, talented basketball team. Cleveland, the T-Wolves twice, the Clippers twice, and then the Kings. I just don't think they've consistently shown a high enough level defensively, a high enough level in terms of effort for where I'm like, yeah, they're going to overcome being a couple games back from New Orleans and climb up with that sort of schedule in front of them. And then I do still think the Lakers Warriors end up in 9-10. They may have a bit of an advantage in terms of schedule, and I may think that both these teams are better than their record. There's no question about that. And with the Lakers specifically, we've seen the ceiling that they're capable of reaching when they just reach the requisite effort level. But I just think they've kind of dug themselves too deep a hole at this point. And I think that we've seen with the Warriors, again, they've obviously risen to a higher level, but if they were able to just magically flip a switch and then start reeling off a whole bunch of regular season wins, I think that they probably would have done so before getting to this point where now they are just a few games above 500, and they have been in that 9-10 range for so much of the season. So I think that we're still headed for Lakers Warriors in the 9-10.
I agree for the most part. I think if we're going to see a team fluctuate between where they are right now, I think it would probably be Dallas either climbing to 5 or 4 over the Pelicans or Clippers. But yeah, I think the bottom 4 teams are going to stay the same. And the thing about the schedule too, the Suns have one hell of a road stretch here. Their next 5 games are all on the road. That's really tough to endure. And like 2 games against San Antonio, any game against Wemby, I feel like isn't just a wash. You know what I mean? It's always a tough out. So I would probably take Sacramento to lock up 7-8. And then I agree with you, man. I just think the Lakers and Warriors are in too big of a hole. And if any of those teams, I'm not predicting this by any means, if either of those teams slip up, I mean, Houston has been surging, dude. 7 straight wins.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't pick them to leapfrog or get in there, but the Warriors and Lakers fall asleep at the wheel for a couple of games. And the last week of the season could get really grimy for both of those teams.
Yeah, again, like that last, when you get into the end stretch, it's when you run into the issue with teams starting to rest guys. So like even looking at the Warriors-Lakers, the Warriors are heading into a little bit of a tough stretch of their schedule as well. They play the Timberwolves and the Orlando Magic in the next couple of games. Tonight they play the Pacers. Specifically, they have, Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard in Indiana. Now, Steph shot him out of the building when they played in Indiana about a month ago, but that's a tough perimeter matchup. Then you go to Orlando. They have one of the best guard defenders in the league in Jalen Suggs. You go to, obviously, Minnesota's professional, perimeter defense team. Those types of teams have typically given the Warriors some issues. And the Lakers, while they're about to head into a tougher schedule in a little bit, they're in a little bit of an easier stretch right here. So, like, I actually think that it's more likely than not that the Lakers end up at 9 and the Warriors end up at 10. I agree with you guys as it pertains to the play-in. I think we're going to get Mavs and Pelicans out of the play-in. That it's a risk with the Pels because they're in a little bit of a tougher stretch, and obviously BI being out, and he's been so good for them on both ends of the floor as of late, sliding really nicely into that secondary role behind Zion as they've kind of shifted. And then also just everything he's been doing defensively, which has been one of the better defensive seasons of his career. And so, like, obviously there's some risk there, but the same reason why I don't think the Pelicans will drop is the same reason why I don't think the Lakers and Warriors will pass the Suns or the Kings. It's the same reason why I don't think the Houston Rockets will pass the Warriors or the Lakers. It's just that 3 losses is just way too much to make up in this short period of time. Like, again, like, to put it simply, imagine like a 15-game sample and you went and you happen to go, 12-3. They would only have to go, 9-6 to hold their ground, right? So, like, it's just not that difficult to hold that ground over that period of time. And again, you're going to get into that final week and it's going to be a lot of automatic wins. Who do you guys think has the best chance to survive the play-in tournament between the Lakers and the Warriors? Let's start with you, Logan.
Man, I've flip-flopped between this all season long, and I've wanted to sell my stock since the start of this season when I picked the Lakers to win the title. I really want to take Golden State, guys. I really want to take Golden State, and I think they have improved immensely over the back half of this season, with Draymond Green returning, with Chris Paul being such a steadying force off the bench, with the emergence of rookies like Brandon Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis. I can't sing TJD's praises enough, man. That kid is awesome. I just can't bring myself to take Golden State. Jayson, you did a breakdown a couple of days ago about Steph and their reliance on him offensively, and that's really what it comes down to me. I just think the Lakers have more secondary shot creation, more guys that can pull their weight on any given night. I think the Lakers are really well equipped to withstand an off night from a LeBron James, an off night from an Anthony Davis, because they have D'Angelo Russell, because they have Austin Reeves, because they have these other guys that can pull their own weight and create their own shots offensively. And then you get into the fact that we always harp on the Lakers' physical and athletic advantages. It's just something I can bank in on more. I really want to say Golden State. I think Golden State is the more aesthetically pleasing team. They're more fun to watch, in my opinion, but that's not what it comes down to. I think the Lakers still have those physical and athletic advantages, and there's just more shot creation up and down the roster. Also, you add in the fact that, I don't know, man, I think this team has a legit chip on his shoulder. They still got LeBron James. I still think that when this team, it was ironic because last year, right, guys, it was like the Lakers at any given night in the playoffs would just boot a game, and they'd say, you know what? We'll just win tomorrow night. We'll punt on this game. We'll win tomorrow night. I still have that feel with this Lakers team where I think that if they really want to crank the dial up in intense environments, in big game scenarios, I think the Lakers will show up. So it pains me to say it because I've been trying to offload my Lakers stock for so long, but I will side with LA, and I want to take Golden State, man. I want to see Golden State get it done. I'm rooting for that, but my gut says LA is going to get through.
Well, I think that when we're answering this question, we have to start with the fact that this is likely going to be the 9-10 matchup. So first, somebody has to survive this specific game. And that's where I think the answer becomes relatively clear. I just think the Lakers are a brutal matchup for Golden State. I think that we saw that in the playoff series last year. Of course, this is a different Warriors team. It's a younger Warriors team. It's a more athletic Warriors team. But the ultimate insurmountable advantages that the Lakers had last year, to me, were the fact that they had the two superstar talents on the floor, the two guys who could be top 10 players throughout a series, and the Warriors only had the one, that being Steph Curry, and they are very overwhelmingly reliant on him as that lone star shot creator. Shout out to Kuminga and what he has done as a mismatch attacker, weaponizing his athleticism out of the post in transition. He's been so good, but there's still obviously a gap, and I think in that playoff environment, he needs to prove that he can sustain this level. And so that's a real advantage, that the Lakers are just going to have two guys on the floor who are head and shoulders above everybody else except for Steph Curry at all times. I do prefer their secondary shot creation as Logan laid out. I mean, especially with the level that we've been getting from D'Angelo Russell. I don't want to be the guy who banks on D'Lo, because obviously he melted down against the Nuggets last year, and he is just kind of inherently erratic because of his shot selection, because he relies on those tough pull-ups, and he can take the offense out of rhythm when it's not falling. But he is playing at a level that we haven't seen from him in quite some time. I mean, has just been so impressive for this last month plus now. And so I'm at least optimistic about what he can bring in stretches, what Austin Reeves brings in stretches. And so I think it comes down to a combination of two of the three best players by far on the floor in this series. Overall athletic and really massive size advantages. Like, Anthony Davis is just a brutal matchup for the Warriors. We saw that last year in terms of how he was able to dictate the series defensively. Kevon Looney did a really good job of battling him on the glass, but he still ate up boards in that series, was over 14 a game, I believe. And I love TJD, and he is balling out. But the Lakers just don't have a physical answer for Anthony Davis. They didn't have a center who was athletic enough last year. Now they do have an athletic center in TJD, but he's still undersized for that matchup. And if you get dialed in AD, he's just a problem, and he's really a problem against a small team like Golden State. So even though I love how the Warriors have turned the corner overall in the second half of the season, and I think that they have been rejuvenated by this young core, and they're doing a lot of good things, LA specifically is just a really tough matchup if LeBron and AD are going to hit that top gear.
Yeah, I look at it like this. When Vanderbilt's out, I think they're pretty much on similar footing as teams. And honestly, like, I really do feel like even if they're healthy, which, by the way, Jovan Buha came on the show yesterday and reported that Jared Vanderbilt is going to return this season, or not that he's going to, but that it's far more likely that he's going to return this season. So even with that allowed, I think I'd pick the home team between those two regardless. Like, I would have a hard time picking against Steph at home in a single elimination game. That said, I think when Jared Vanderbilt's healthy on the Lakers, I think the Lakers are just better than the Warriors. I think he's that when he's out of the lineup, that specific position group is such a devastating weakness for the Lakers that Steph can get comfortable all game long, and that's a real problem. Like, literally, Austin Reeves draws the Steph assignment when Jared Vanderbilt's out of the lineup, and we've seen how that's been a problem. But with Vanderbilt healthy, they're just more built for that sort of thing. That said, I still think just with the way the schedules are set up, even though they have similar remaining strength of schedule, the Lakers' tougher parts of their schedule are later on, whereas the Warriors' tougher parts of the schedule are earlier on. And I think that benefits LA. They also have a head-to-head matchup on April 9th where the Lakers will be at home, which I think is an advantage towards the Lakers. So even though, again, I think you'd be foolish to count Steph out, I think if Golden State did get the 9 seed, I would lean towards picking them to win that 9-10 game. I just think it's more likely than not that the Lakers win the 9 seed. And if Jared Vanderbilt is healthy, I think the Lakers have a better chance of winning a road game in Oracle than the Warriors have a chance of beating the Lakers in Crypto.com Arena if in the event that they're the 10 seed. So I think I lean towards the Lakers there. As far as the 7-8 matchup goes, I really like the Kings are definitely a tougher matchup for the Lakers than either the Suns or the Kings are for the Warriors. So in a weird way, I actually give the Warriors a slightly better chance should they beat the Lakers to get out of that 7-8 matchup. But the one, excuse me, the one thing that I keep pointing to with the Lakers as a kind of like an optimistic sign for them as a play-in team is that they do not rely on variance nearly as much as the other teams around the league. The Warriors are a high volume jump shooting team. The Lakers are not. The Lakers are one of the lowest volume 3-point shooting teams in the league. They're one of the most frequent paint scoring teams in the league. They have an ability to scale up in terms of their physical in position when they get into those matchups. A big example for me would be like Game 6 last year, Lakers-Warriors. Lakers at home. They get their butt kicked in Game 5. Now, as Logan pointed out earlier, that's kind of was their theme last year, is they would just punt specific games. But in that Game 6, what happened? LeBron came out in the first quarter and was like, I'm bigger and stronger than all these dudes. And for one night, I can bury them all in the rim. And he went out and he did that. And so, again, like I think when we really zoom in on it, both teams have a decent chance, but I'd say I give the Warriors a little bit less than a 50% chance of escaping the play-in and the Lakers a little bit more than a 50% chance. And so I'd lean towards the Lakers. So one last note on that before we head out to the Eastern Conference play-in. If you're the Lakers, and we're going to do both of these rapid fire, so we'll go through both of you and then we'll go to the Warriors. If you're the Lakers, who's the one team you want to avoid in a road play-in game? Let's start with you, Carson.
I think it would have to be Dallas if they're in this conversation. I mean, they're on the fringes of the play-in. I just think the Lakers still have a physical advantage in the front court there, but it has diminished from what would have been overwhelming earlier in the year. We've seen Dallas improve so much as a rebounding team, just improve their overall big situation. And then I just think the offensive ceiling that they have with Luka and Kyrie when they're going, it can be really overwhelming. And so I just think they're the scariest team. The Kings have been a tough matchup specifically for the Lakers with the quickness of their guards and the whole Sabonis AD battle, but I still like the Lakers in that matchup. So it's definitely Dallas to me.
If Dallas
Logan?
is in the conversation, I'd say Dallas. Sacramento doesn't scare me if I'm LA. Phoenix doesn't scare me if I'm LA. I don't really consider I have enough confidence in Dallas getting out of the Final Four. So I would take Golden State, honestly. And that's what I want to emphasize. I don't want to count out Golden State by any means. Like if Steph does go crazy in a one-game scenario, and Clay is still a swing factor in a one-game scenario where if he's hitting big shots and his shot is on, he is the kind of guy that can swing a single game, right? If Anthony Davis has an off night shooting, like there's a recipe for Golden State to win a game. Because I consider Dallas kind of out of this conversation, I would definitely say that I lean LA, but Golden State still scares the hell out of me if I'm LA, man. They've got all the recipe, you know what I mean? And we've seen it before. So Golden State still terrifies me if I'm Los Angeles.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that I think a road game in Dallas or Golden State would both be issues for the Lakers. Really, a road game against any of those teams, I think for the Lakers would be tough. They've got a lot of young players, and they really depend on their role players playing well, which is scary in those types of environments. I still lean the Kings as the scariest Lakers matchup, and it really is this simple to me. Like, I think LeBron and AD would be able to scale up physically against Dallas. I think they'd be able to scale up physically against Golden State. Meaning, what I mean by that is, like, I don't think PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford or PJ Washington and Derek Lively are going to be able to hold up well under a LeBron James, Anthony Davis onslaught in a single elimination game. That the Kings, the Kings are a bad defense, but they have defensive strengths, and they've had moments this year where they've been a really good defense. And the Kings' two defensive strengths both play specifically into Laker offensive weaknesses, which is the Lakers guards struggle against ball pressure, good physical ball pressure. And the Kings have a ton of quickness at the guard position to cause those sorts of problems. And secondly, Anthony Davis is an inconsistent over-the-top shot maker, and Sabonis is quicker and stronger than him. So you can beat him to spots and force him to make shots over the top. Some nights Anthony Davis makes all his hooks and jumpers, and some nights he just can't make them to save his life, and that can be a problem. And then on the other end of the floor, it's just a simple matter of like, I actually like the Lakers against over the top shot makers, which is your Luka, your Kyrie, obviously looking at even the Suns guys, even looking at the Clippers guys, even looking at the Thunder guys. Like the Lakers have done really well this year defensively against teams that rely on over-the-top shot making because they have good positional defenders that can get contests on shots. And because the Lakers do so much damage in the paint on the other end of the floor, it brings a physical wear and tear element that can sometimes lead to jump shots missing. I've seen a lot of complaints from people who don't like the Lakers this year being like, oh, they got lucky, this team missed shots. Oh, they got lucky, this team missed shots. And they don't realize it keeps happening because the Lakers play bully ball, and that can have a wear and tear effect on the game. Whereas like with the Kings in particular, obviously De'Aaron Fox is having a great pull-up shooting year. Obviously, we know Malik Monk can hit pull-up jump shots. Obviously, we know Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter and these guys can shoot, but the primary driving force behind their offense is actually a downhill force element. It's De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. It's Domantas Sabonis and his power game. So like they're a team that I think plays more directly into the Lakers' weaknesses on both ends of the floor. All right, quickly, Warriors, starting with you, Logan. Who's the one team you want to avoid if you're the Warriors?
Ironically, it's LA. I think that matchup's going to be a battle. I think that they just match up really well against each other. Like Carson said earlier, I don't think Golden State has an answer for AD. It's like, I think at the top of the draft, we were doing prospect breakdowns the other day. It's like, they don't have a big Zoo. They don't have a Hartenstein. They don't have a Robinson. And like just having a big body, I think if Golden State could somehow swing it like a Donovan Clingan or somebody like that, like an immediate impact, big body center would be really effective, I think, for a team like Golden State, where you could run different types of defensive coverages. You just have a physical answer, a guy that just matches up well against any big body. And Golden State has not had that with Looney slightly tailing off this year. You know what I mean? He's not the same guy that he once was. I think they could get physically overwhelmed. Again, I'm not counting them out. And this isn't a shot at Sacramento. As a Kings fan, I just kind of have a sinking feeling that Sacramento is not going to get it done. And then Phoenix, I don't know about you guys. Phoenix doesn't really scare me at all. I just think they can't play defense. So ironically, I think the kryptonite for both of these teams is a matchup against each other. And it kind of seems like that's the collision course that we're headed on. So for both teams, I'd say it's LA Golden State.
I think it's LA for Golden State because of a lot of the reasons that I laid out earlier. And just to mention Phoenix, because I do think they're obviously a very talented basketball team. I just don't necessarily identify them as a tough matchup for a lot of people because it feels to me like they are just very dependent on what level of shot making are we going to get from our stars. And generally, when I think about matchup, it's like, okay, what do you have that is going to make X team uncomfortable? And because of their lack of defensive grip, because of their lack of physicality overall, I don't think Phoenix is really going to shine there. It's going to be like, what level are our stars playing at and how is their difficult shot making? But I think it's LA. Again, I think it's the star advantage. I think it's the physical advantage. I do think Vando coming back is a real problem at the point of attack, just able to hassle Steph off ball. I think that we saw how effective their pick and roll coverages were with both him and AD against Steph last year in the playoffs. And so I think it's pretty clearly the Lakers who the Warriors want to avoid.
Yeah, I think it's the Lakers too. I think if in the event that they won a game against the Lakers, let's say that they get the 9 seed and they go to Oracle and they win, or they happen to upset them at Crypto, the team that I'd be most worried about if I was Golden State at that point is Dallas. They have the interior size and length with Derek Lively. I go back and forth with Gafford and Lively, but I think in that specific matchup, I'd really like doing some of the stuff that a lot of teams have done against the Warriors, where you top lock and funnel and basically just count on Derek Lively to be kind of a deterrent at the rim, playing off of the non-shooters. So yeah, I'd probably lean towards Dallas in the event that they escape the Lakers, but I agree with you. The Lakers, to me, the Lakers are, when healthy with Jared Vanderbilt, the best team out of that play-in group. Overall, even including the Pelicans, just when they're actually healthy. But that again, like I think Jared Vanderbilt being out has made the Lakers look so physically overwhelmed on the perimeter But like little things, like when Vando's in there, it just slots everything so much better. Now Austin Reeves is guarding the second best perimeter player, which is something he actually can handle as opposed to being in a struggle position. Jared Vanderbilt's one of their best defensive rebounders at the forward position. He's so much better offensively this year than he was last year, mainly because of the system that they're using. Like I think the Lakers are very much just in the pack right now, but when Vanderbilt's healthy, like they're legitimately, and I look at them more in that tier with the teams below Denver at the top when they're actually healthy. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. UConn is currently the favorite to win the title at plus 500. My favorite team, hometown Tucson, Arizona Wildcats, are currently plus 1,300. Plenty of good bets to check out. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. The crown is yours. You'll know real when you get it. It'll say eBay Authenticity Guarantee, and you'll feel it. Because when it comes to your feet, eBay has your back. Maybe it's a head-turning pair for hooping or a hot new collab. Whatever you're after, when you cop on eBay, you can trust that your kicks will be checked by experts. Not just any experts, sneaker experts who live and breathe the culture. Real people with real hands-on authentication experience. That's what the blue check mark represents on our listings. eBay Authenticity Guarantee, meaning every inch, stitch, sole, and logo is verified authentic through a detailed inspection. So when you finally step into those Grail kicks, you'll realize that the feeling is unlike any other. And with eBay's Authenticity Guarantee, that feeling of real is always within reach. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. Moving on to the East plan. And we won't say as long on this one just because it's not as interesting and some of the stuff is more set. The 9 and 10 seeds are set. Chicago's at the 9. Atlanta's at the 10. That's most likely not going to change. We do have 3 teams tied at 31 losses, though. The Pacers with a 13th toughest remaining schedule, 51% opponent win percentage. The 76ers, a 20th toughest remaining schedule, 48% opponent winning percentage. The Heat, 4th easiest remaining schedule, 47% in opponent winning percentage. So, on this one, what I'd like to see is, just for fun, and we'll start with you, Carson. What, with number 1 being Boston, 2 Milwaukee, 3 being Cleveland, what's your ideal set of matchups for the first round? Just as a basketball fan, what would you prefer to see in the Eastern Conference first round as the survivors from the play-in?
So I think there's potential for some pretty fun matchups here just because of the Heat doing their normal regular season routine where they have these brutal stretches. And obviously they had some injuries early in the year, but just being way down there in the standings. And then obviously Philly dropping far because of the Embiid injury. So I think there's a couple of dangerous first round draws for the top seeds. I would like to see Celtics Heat in the first round, just because I think that would be a fantastic test for this Boston team, see how different they really are than previous iterations. And I think that they are, for what it's worth. I think they're significantly better than last year. But if anybody's going to make them uncomfortable, it's Miami. And I would just love to see that rematch. There's just a pretty fun history in recent years between those teams and these high stakes playoff matchups. Then I would like to see Bucks Sixers. And these are both very plausible. I mean, Miami and Philly are both in that play-in range right now. I just think that seeing Embiid Giannis would be a super fun first round matchup. I think seeing what Tyrese Maxey could do against a Bucks point of attack defense that obviously still has its issues would be fun. I think seeing the Dame Maxey matchup overall would be really exciting. And I think getting 2 of the top 5 players on the planet, 2 huge physical guys like Embiid, Giannis, matched up, that would just be really exciting. And those are 2 really good teams. I think Philly's obviously much better than their seed this year. Then I have Cavs Pacers just as a sort of leftovers matchup. I think that Cleveland is pretty clearly better there. The Pacers have just been bumming me out ever since Hallie came back from the hamstring, just because he's not even close to the same player. So I loved watching him. I loved watching their offense early in this year. I think that he is still very much the future, but right now he's just limping through this season. And I'd like to see Siakam fit, but when he is nothing close to himself, when he can't get a step, when he's settling for all these brutally tough pull-up threes, like, the Pacers aren't that fun and they just aren't that good because they need that offense to be great. And then I have Orlando against New York because I think that would be a really fun defensive minded matchup. That would be a kind of throwback series just in terms of the grittiness, the physicality. You have some big forwards in this matchup. If it's Franz, if it's Paolo, if it's Julius Randle, obviously OG Anunoby as a defensive counter. And I would kind of enjoy the defensive chess match between these two teams. And Orlando is a fun young team. I personally don't think they really have the offensive ceiling to make noise in this playoff run. I would definitely take New York. I think healthy New York is a really scary playoff team. But I think that would be an interesting matchup for both these teams. And I think it would just present some discomfort inherently by their play styles.
I think as long as Atlanta and Chicago get bounced, I think the first round is going to be awesome. As long as we can remove both of those teams, it's going to be a good time. I flopped on some of these. I think a rematch of Cavs Knicks would honestly be really fun. Seeing if Cleveland can make adjustments, and just the fact that New York, that battle of the interior guys, man, Allen and Mobley versus Robinson and Randall, Hardenstein. That was awesome last year watching those guys battle. Like, you talk about a throwback series. We kind of got it last year, and I'm honestly down to double down and get that again this year and see if Cleveland can make adjustments, if the Knicks can just go in there and handle business. I really like Philly versus Milwaukee. I think that, what Tyrese Maxey has done in the absence of Joel Embiid this season has been like astounding. I knew Maxey was great, but seeing him this year without having a guy to rely on, like Embiid, Maxey's pull-up shooting, his command of the offense, the way he's controlled the game, I've been super impressed with him. So I think it would be an offensive showdown between them and Milwaukee. Obviously, I'm going to take Milwaukee if Embiid's not healthy. And then on the Miami point, I want to ask you guys, I think Miami matches up because they just got the Heat culture. I think they're better than last year with the improvement of guys like Triple J, Jovic. They add in Terry Rozier. Is it wrong of me to question if Jimmy Butler is going to be good to go for this playoff run? Like, it's rubbed me the wrong way that we haven't, and I know Jimmy and Miami do this every year, but Jimmy's just been so consistently out, missing games. I don't know. Is it wrong of me to be concerned if Jimmy Butler is going to be good to go come playoff time?
Be my guest, man.
Our friend Ryan Brumley has always said that he hates Miami and Jimmy because they always take the regular season off, and it just makes them really difficult to evaluate in that regard. To which point I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. Jimmy's been banged up year after year. He generally shows up in the playoffs and balls. I wouldn't be the guy to be throwing around a bunch of anti-Miami takes right now. And listen, I've been that guy. And I still am sitting here saying that they're probably going to lose first round. That'll depend on the matchup, but I think Jimmy's going to be fine.
So obviously Boston, Miami is the easy one. You just want to see that. That's a fun rematch. Milwaukee, Philly, I understand the appeal there, and I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't enjoy that as a basketball fan. But part of me really, just for Embiid's sake, just hopes that Philly misses the playoffs this year, because I don't want him to rush back and then look like a shell of himself and lose in the first round again, and then just further exacerbate the narrative surrounding him. I think Embiid is eventually going to break through in a big way in the postseason, and I'd almost rather have him just sit out the rest of the season than manage his knee more diligently next year. Stop worrying about regular season awards and just get to April healthy, and then have him try to make a run at that point. But that said, obviously, I'd have fun seeing Milwaukee, Philly. In the event that Philly misses the playoffs, the team that I think would be really fun to see against Milwaukee as a fun first round opponent is Chicago. They have a plethora of perimeter defenders to throw at Damian Lillard to make work extremely hard. They have a lot of perimeter speed in general, which is a weakness for Milwaukee. Their set of perimeter shot creators between guys like Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan, they would be comfortable most of the series going against Milwaukee's perimeter options. And then Chicago with Andre Drummond and Nikola Vucevic, they actually have a decent amount of interior size, which I think would help in terms of the building of the wall type of stuff going on when you're trying to defend Giannis in a playoff series. So obviously I'd pick Milwaukee to win that series, but talking about a fun first round matchup, obviously that'd be a good one. Cavs Pacers, 100% with you on that front. Although Cavs Knicks would also be a fun kind of like rematch type of situation. Halliburton, dude, like I think I don't know about you guys. Have either of you ever had a hamstring strain?
I have not.
So I had one before I played in college. This was when I was very young. I was like 18, 19 years old, and I ended up re-injuring it a few times before it finally got healthy. And I like literally there was a lengthy stage where I just didn't trust it at all to like really take aggressive steps. And with Tyrese Halliburton, specifically when it comes to beating switches, he needs to take those like really aggressive long steps to get to his spots. And I just don't think he's in a good place physically right now. And I think it's starting to hurt his confidence, which is starting to hurt even his wide open jump shooting. And I'm with you, Carson. I'm a big believer in Halliburton in the big picture, but he's just not close to form right now, which is unfortunate. And then Orlando, New York, like you could not script a better, just old fashioned 1990s ass kicking of a series. That would just be a ton of fun. All right, moving on to the top of the conference, though. I'm interested in kind of talking about Boston and Milwaukee as it pertains to the future, because both of these teams, with exception of a player option for Drew Holiday, which he may or may not pick up, we'll see. But with both of these teams, their starting fives are more or less locked up for the next season and more for some of the other guys. So with that being the circumstance, who has more urgency to win a title this year, Boston or Milwaukee? We'll start with you, Logan.
Urgency is an interesting word, because if you think that Damian Lillard is going to fall off next season, or if he's not going to turn this around, I'd probably say Milwaukee. That being said, I think it's interesting. I was talking with one of my friends about how long it takes like stars to gel with teams. And so I wonder if it's just a year of growing pains, right? Even LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh didn't get it done in their first year in Miami. And so I wonder if it's just a time thing. I think it's a personnel thing with Milwaukee. The fact that they don't have point of attack defense, that they don't have, they got a lot of aging guys on their roster, that they're getting older. I also do think it's a chemistry thing and something that may improve with time. I think Boston has more pressure, but I think the team that needs to get it done more is probably Milwaukee with their aging superstars. That being said, I don't really see a path for Milwaukee. I've kind of been off Milwaukee for a while. I think it would take a serious injury to another team. I honestly think the Knicks are probably my second favorite team in the Eastern Conference, including Milwaukee. I would say urgency-wise, I think there's probably more pressure on Milwaukee just because they have so many older guys on their team that, I could see Brook Lopez taking even a further step back. I could see Damian Lillard maybe taking another step back next season. I'd say urgency-wise, Boston's younger. There's a ton of pressure on Boston, man, because they keep hitting their freaking head on the ceiling, man. And you keep wondering, like, when are they finally going to break through? 2018, you go 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron. 2020, you lose in 6 to the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. You collapse in the NBA Finals against the Warriors in 22, and then Miami slams the door in your face again. And so, it's frustrating. And I think there's a lot of pressure mounting for Boston, but they're not going anywhere. They've got a culture. They've got the players locked up. They've got a ton of talent. They're going to be back here probably the next couple seasons. So I think Boston has more pressure, but I think there's got to be a lot more urgency for Milwaukee, man. They're just older. And, I can see this. And I didn't even mention Middleton. Middleton's another guy with health concerns, with aging, with him potentially losing a step. It's just, I can see Milwaukee definitely nosediving after this season. Boston's probably a perennial contender. Despite how frustrating they are, they're going to be back.
There's definitely more urgency for Milwaukee. They're just in a much more precarious position. They've gone all in on this core, comprised mostly of dudes who are in their early and mid 30s, outside of Giannis, who himself is still 29. He's not as young, obviously, as Jayson Tatum as the cornerstone. And there are legitimate basketball flaws here that they have not been able to reconcile up to this point with the point of attack defense, the Dame thing. Logan, you talk about if it's fit. I absolutely think that is a factor. I think that we still have not seen Dame and Giannis unlock the potential that they have with their two-man game. I think that there's still a really high ceiling there, but there's just a bit of synergy and feel between the two of them that they haven't totally tapped into, and just the volume at which they run Giannis Dame pick and roll has not been high enough in my opinion. And so then you have Dame running a bunch of pick and roll with Brook Lopez, and it's very stagnant, and you know that he's popping every single time. And so Dame's shot quality has gone down. I think if he were running more pick and roll with a legitimate rim threatening athletic big, that would just be better for everybody involved. I also think Dame has lost a bit of a step this year, though. I think in terms of quickness, and he's getting to the rim at a career low rate. Like, he's been on a really good stretch these last 3 games, and I think he's capable of exploding. But this is not the Damian Lillard that was advertised. This is not the Damian Lillard that we saw last year, who had maybe the offensive season of his career. And so that's just frightening when you consider that's what you've gone all in on. And that was supposed to be like the miracle drug. That was supposed to be the thing that would solve everything, fix your half-court offense. And from that point, your backline defense is good enough. You're going to contend. You have Dame and Giannis. You have the best duo on the planet. If that formula isn't great enough, then Milwaukee's in a really tough spot, because the rest of this roster just isn't even close to up to par with what Boston has. Boston has this team of super soldiers, man, this starting 5 that is just unfair. And they are younger, and they are healthier at this point. Like, I'm more worried about Chris Middleton being healthy for a playoff run than Kristaps Porzingis, and he's older. And Milwaukee's just slow because of their age. So, yeah, there is definitely more pressure on Boston in the sense that, hey, you guys are overwhelmingly talented. You are the team that hasn't done it yet. Milwaukee, albeit with Jrue Holiday instead of Damian Lillard, like, most of these core guys have gotten a ring. But if you are talking about actual circumstantial urgency, like, if you guys don't do it this year, you're going to have to start asking some big questions. Like, maybe Boston would be so disappointed that the city eats itself alive and they burn down Boston, then that's a problem. But we know that they could come back next year and still be the most talented team in the league. And Milwaukee doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah, the way you both put it is perfect. I would say Boston has more pressure and Milwaukee has more urgency. The pressure basically just meaning Boston is expected to win. And so if they don't, there's obviously a certain level of like backlash that will come from every basket. Like, Boston's in a position where, like, if they don't win it this year, no one will ever believe in them until they actually hoist it. They could be up 3-2 in the NBA Finals and no one would believe it until they actually hoisted the trophy. The breakdown of the age the ages of the starters that Carson kind of went over is something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, as of next year, all 5 of Milwaukee's starters will be in their 30s. And this is a team that already has a certain amount of a lack of foot speed, and like, even Giannis is starting to succumb to some injuries, which has become a little bit more prevalent over the last few years. This hamstring thing he's dealing with has been a little tricky, as he's been not as vertically athletic as we're accustomed to seeing with Giannis. So yeah, like, it's, in terms of the urgency, it really is that simple. You look at Boston, both of the Jays and Kristaps Porzingis are still firmly in the heart of their prime in their late 20s. As of next year, both Derek White and Jrue Holiday will be in their 30s, but they both look really good physically right now and are more or less, reliable in that regard. And so, just with Milwaukee, to put it simply, there's just a shorter window. Even as you look at Boston, they're still improving. Jaylen Brown is playing the best basketball of his career right now. Jayson Tatum is, since January 1st, in a 35-game sample size, is taking 6 pull-up threes per game and shooting over 40% on them. So all of those conversations, which, by the way, were legitimate. This is new information. We always have people that are like, oh, take back everything you said about Tatum. It's like, actually, he used to miss them. Now he makes them. It's a difference. but literally, for 3 years, Tatum was a high-volume pull-up three-point shooter and couldn't make them at a high enough clip. He was in the low 30s, and now he's hitting them at 40%. And so Tatum's getting better. Jaylen Brown's getting better. Kristaps Porzingis in the last 2-3 years has made significant leaps as a player. Derek White has gone from being like an interesting young guard prospect to like a useful role player to like a borderline fringe star in terms of his overall impact on both ends of the floor. And then Jrue Holiday as a 5th starter, you really can't do much better than that. And so Boston just has more room to grow. That's what's so funny, is even if Boston loses this year, everyone will roast them. Everyone will have fun at their expense. And then they're going to be right back next year kicking everybody's ass again. On the Milwaukee front, though, I want to be clear. Even though they're under more urgency, and even though they're not as good as Boston, there's a lot of encouraging stuff there as well. Like some of the issues with the two-man game you had mentioned, some of that has to do with the fact that as Dame is starting to kind of figure it out, Giannis has been dealing with some injury issues. Chris Middleton has been out of the lineup for a good chunk of this year, and now he's finally back. Damian Lillard, you mentioned it, Carson, back-to-back-to-back 30-point games for just the second time this season. But zooming in on it a little bit further, in his last 13 games, on 9 3-point attempts per game, he's shooting 44% from three. So Dame has been in a good offensive rhythm. I've been seeing throughout the year enough to make me believe that this was less about decline and more about learning how to play with this particular group in terms of the geometry of the floor and just where his touches come from. And I think we're starting to see some of that come together. And so I think Milwaukee is still every bit as potent and capable as we thought they were to begin the season. It's just been a disappointing season because Dame was so bad for so much of it, and because honestly the Adrian Griffin issue as well has to be factored in there. So I definitely think Boston has more pressure, but Milwaukee definitely has more urgency. Moving out west, so Nikola Jokic polishing up the jumper, getting ready for the postseason. Jamal Murray obviously has been playing at an all-star level. The Nuggets have lost just twice since the All-Star break, and both of those losses involved a last-second shot that either sent it to OT or ended the game. They have had multiple, probably about a half dozen, just ridiculous half-court ass-kicking sessions that they've put on at the end of games to put things away. Denver just seems like a freight train to me. And so I'm going to present this question to you guys like this, and I'll start with you, Carson. Would you take Denver or the field at this point to win the NBA title?
It's a really good question. I would probably take Denver, but I don't think there's a big gap between them and Boston. I'm very confident that one of those two teams is going to win the title. I think that Boston is the most overwhelmingly talented. And I think that as a basketball team, they have the highest ceiling with the level that Jaylen Brown has been playing at as of late. If you get Kristaps Porzingis consistently knocking down his shots from the perimeter, which he didn't really do when they played Denver, and he was getting good looks there, just the overall athleticism that they have, the combination of perimeter defense and interior defense, the fact that they're a good rebounding team. They have 2 star shot creators. Jalen's been balling. Jayson's having a career season. They can go on these flame-throwing runs from deep. They lead the league in 3-point volume, and they're second in terms of their percentage there. So the ceiling that they have is incredibly high. I do still think that Denver is a bit more reliable, though, because their offensive brilliance is truly inevitable. They are never going to break down in terms of process. They are never going to experience the swings in terms of perimeter shot making that, although Boston's ceiling is very high, we saw the difference maker in their matchup. And Boston fans may say, oh, well, we had a just miserable shooting game from deep, but so did Denver. Denver made 4 threes in that game. They could not knock down a shot from the perimeter, and they have one advantage that nobody else in the league does, which is that offensive machine just keeps churning because of Nikola Jokic's interior dominance offensively, because of his ability to create quality shots in and around the paint for cutters, for Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot, Jamal Murray's mid-range shot making. Like, Denver is less susceptible to shot variance than anybody else in the NBA. They won 2 games in the finals last year where they made 5 3-pointers or fewer. Nobody else did that in the entirety of the postseason. Nobody else can survive off shooting nights like Denver. And by the way, they're a really good shooting team, but they don't need to be to win every single game. And I think that that's a huge advantage. I think they're a top 3 offense of this century. I mean, particularly in the clutch, the shot quality they can create with either a Nikola Jokic post-up. Obviously, I think he's the best post scorer on the planet and the best scorer, period, and he can get to any of those touch shots and make 65% of them no matter who's on him. But if you dig, he's going to create a good shot for a shooter. If you double from the paint, he and Aaron Gordon have maybe the best 2-man chemistry that I've ever seen. And so there is an inevitability there. Whereas Jayson Tatum, yes, has been on a really good pull-up shooting run, but you can see these stretches from Boston where the decision-making from Tatum and Brown isn't great, and they are susceptible to just down stretches in terms of perimeter shot making. And Denver's a really good defensive team, too. I think that obviously, particularly on the perimeter, they have some good athletes. They're not a team that is at all easy to like pinpoint mismatches with. I think about that a lot, where You see it in the Mavs game recently, for example, where Luka is like trying to hunt switches and go at Jamal Murray late in that game. And it's still not super easy. Like Jamal's still a 6'4", compact, pretty athletic guard. So I think they're underrated defensively and they're the best offense in the league, the offense that I trust the most by a good bit. But I just can't act like they are head and shoulders above Boston because I know what Boston is capable of. Boston has the most talented starting five that we've seen certainly since the peak Golden State Warriors. I think this is a team that in most post-Warriors years, like, would be better than the champion. I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on that because I think Denver is the strongest champion we've seen since those Warriors. I think if you dropped this Celtics team against the 2019 field, well, Toronto, just because Golden State was hurt that year. The 2020 Lakers are tough, but the 2021 Bucks, 2022 Warriors, I think this Boston team is so overwhelmingly talented that I would take them against most of those teams. And I think that that's a testament to how strong both these teams are. I think that we are headed on kind of a collision course for one of the best finals of this century. I view both these teams very, very highly.
I'm taking Denver, and I agree with you. I think it's going to be a battle of the Titans. If the Celtics are the Avengers, Jokic is Thanos. And
nice.
To me, it comes down to one thing. Jayson made I can't remember what take you made it about Jayson. You were talking about how star players, their teams assume the identity of their star player. And I really think that that's what it comes down to with both of these teams. The Celtics leader is Jayson Tatum, and Tatum is susceptible to bad pull-up shooting runs, settling for a lot of threes. And so that's what his team does a lot. I'm not putting that all on Jayson Tatum's shoulders, but by and large, they have assumed the identity of Jayson Tatum. And there is no team more in the NBA that I think has assumed the identity of their leader than the Denver Nuggets. Jokic's impact, his unselfishness not only creates open looks and open opportunities for his teammates, but it makes his teammates more unselfish. Like, watch a Nuggets game, and it will blow you away when you're watching Aaron Gordon kick it to MPJ, and MPJ will swing it. And it's beautiful basketball. Carson, you talk about them being one of the greatest offenses of this century. It's the most beautiful basketball. It's like the 2000s and 2010 Spurs. It's like the 2010s Warriors. The ball movement is unreal. And that's what it comes down to me. Like, the entirety of the Nuggets team has assumed part of Jokic's identity is we're going to play unselfish, beautiful basketball. We're going to make that extra pass, and it's going to kill you. It's part in why the Nuggets are so infallible when it comes to clutch offense, because they are looking for that extra pass, because they are looking to play make for their team is just so unselfish because their leader is. And that's the beautiful thing about the Nuggets, and that's why I can't pick against them. I do think the Celtics are probably the most talented team we've seen since the Warriors, even with like the 2020 Lakers are probably the closest, but there's a depth advantage that the Celtics have that the Lakers don't have when you're comparing those teams apples to apples. So I don't want to undersell Boston, but what it comes down to me is the fact that both of these teams, buy into their identity, their culture, their leader. I trust Denver's culture and their leader more, and I think it is permeated to the rest of the roster in a way that you seldom see with teams, man. Like, their unselfishness is unreal. And that's why that's ultimately why I buy in and can't bet against Denver. Also, the fact, like you mentioned, Carson, you got MPJ just banging nails on contested threes. Every one of their players has something that they can kill you with, man. If it's an Aaron Gordon dunker spot lob, if it's coming. I do think the Nuggets are inevitable, and I would really be surprised if they didn't win the title.
To be clear, I have Denver as my championship favorite, and I'm more confident in them now than I was even to start the season. I think they're just better than they were last year. I think they have more well-defined roles and more well-defined processes on both ends of the floor, even than Boston does, which I think allows them to kind of reach their ceiling more frequently than Boston does, even though I agree Boston's ceiling is higher. Carson, I thought the bit you did on their lack of reliance on variance was super, super interesting. That stat about the 5 made threes in the finals, that's absolutely crazy. And I mean, I think that reflected in the Celtics games. They got outshot by Boston in both games on jump shots in terms of jump shot efficiency. And both of those teams are good jump shooting teams. They're both top 10 jump shooting teams in the league by point per shot efficiency. And so, like, their ability to weather that kind of storm. And again, I think like one of the big ones too is just Denver knows exactly like their hierarchy in big situations. Boston can get a little bit finicky on that end, and they don't really know what they want to run, which I think is part of the reason why they get inconsistent. That said, winning 4 championship rounds is really, really hard. And even though I would pick Denver over the field in the Western Conference, I think once you throw in that Boston variable, I think that it's a lot to say Denver winning over anybody else as an option. And so even though I'm more confident than Denver or in Denver than I have been at all this season, I still think like there's a less than 50% chance that they win just because of all of the variables that go into it. I would pick them. I will pick them in every series. I will pick them against Boston if they get to the finals. I agree with you, Carson. I think it's going to be an all-time great series. That said, I think there's obviously like just a ton of variance in the NBA. I mean, even just looking back to the simple fact that we haven't had a repeat conference finalist in the last 5 years just goes to show you the stuff that you can run into in a postseason series. Not to mention the injury risk along the way. To like, there's just always a chance that maybe Jamal Murray will go down or Michael Porter Jr. will go down before you get there. And obviously, as we know, Denver synergy depends so much on all 5 of those guys being healthy. And so, yeah, I think Denver fans should feel very confident. But if I was, forced to pick Denver or the field, I'd pick the field just because I think the field is all, unless you're picking like Tiger Woods in his prime to win a major. Fair. Like it's hard to go against the field in these sorts of situations. All right, before we get out of here today, we're gonna have a fun game. We're gonna go rapid fire style. We're gonna start with Logan. I'm going to give you, I have 6 of, I don't want to call them bad takes, because sometimes I think hot takes are good takes, just for entertainment's sake. Let's call these takes that I vehemently disagree with. Okay, I've got 6 of them. What I want to do is we're going to go back and forth. We'll go rapid fire style. I just want you guys to give your initial reaction, like what your basketball mind screams when you see something like this, when you're scrolling through your phone in the morning over some coffee, like the spit take, and then what comes next. All right, so Logan, you're up first. This is from the famous Hooper Twitter account, Ball Don't Stop. The 3 highest scoring players ever, meaning Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Karl Malone and LeBron James, wouldn't really be considered pure scorers, but their durability was insane, and their scoring arsenal just worked so well and efficiently. They really outlasted everyone from their era and the era after their era. Logan, how do you feel about Karl Malone, LeBron James, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar not being considered pure scorers by the Hooper community?
I don't really know what that means. I mean, what? How do you score nearly 40,000 points or 40,000 plus points? The only guy I'd say is probably Karl Malone, because he was a John Stockton merchant, but that's another conversation for another day. I mean, yeah, dude, like Kareem and LeBron just have 2 of the most unstoppable scoring skill sets of all time. LeBron with the fact that he's one of the greatest rim pressures and most unstoppable athletes ever. And then Kareem with just one of the most immaculate post games and shots of all time. So I don't really understand. I wouldn't consider them like pure scorers because they do everything else, but to not call them scorers is ridiculous. They're 2 of the greatest of all time. That's kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah, totally unsurprising though, coming from Ball Don't Stop especially. And I think that there is a large group of the basketball community who has a serious infatuation with basically the aesthetics of one-on-one scoring.
That boy nice.
And very little interest in the effectiveness. Logan said it well, like if you can't stop something, you can't stop it. What Ball Don't Stop said in that tweet about the effectiveness of it, that's what matters. What should define if somebody is a great scorer. I mean, pure scorer is such a nebulous term. Like, what does pure mean? That you also don't excel in the other aspects of the game? Like, is that something that we want to be lauding? Do we love Cam Thomas because all he does is take tough shots? And like, yeah, I like watching Cam Thomas when he's on. Like, he's got a really shifty movement style and he's got a deep bag and he's a tough shot creator, but there's a reason that there's not a lot of teams banging on the door to get Cam Thomas. There's a reason that Jamal Crawford wasn't as good as he was fun to watch a highlight tape of. Like these dudes who may have these awesome dribble combinations and maybe great difficult shot makers. Like if you aren't getting to your spots, if you aren't making life easy on yourself offensively, and especially if you aren't doing the other things that matter in a basketball game, playmaking, defending, rebounding, etc., then you're just not going to be that effective in an NBA game. So I see this sort of thinking all the time. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, there is value in having a tough shot making skill set, right? Like, if you are going to try to run clutch offense through Giannis Antetokounmpo, who may be a super effective scorer, you're going to have issues, because if teams just fully commit to, hey, we're walling off the rim in this specific situation, he doesn't have the requisite counters. But for most of the game, I mean, he's just going to be able to get 30 efficiently because he has these unstoppable traits. And I think many people overvalue just how does it look when you score.
Yeah, I think it gets a little complicated when you're differentiating between the Giannis types and
Agreed.
like the
Agreed.
LeBrons and the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars and the Jokic's, because it's like there is some truth to the fact that, you know, Giannis's lack of skill polish can become an issue when he gets into the half court,
Totally.
which is more complicated than just reading his point per game.
But he's a better
numbers.
scorer than Jamal.
But yeah,
Crawford,
like it really,
you know.
but for sure, yeah, no, you're
Ball don't stop wouldn't say
100% agree. But yeah, like the hilarious part to me about this tweet is the part that says their scoring arsenal just works so well and efficiently, and it's like, oh, so that's what a pure scorer is, isn't it? Like that's the literal definition. And then also, like, again, so much of the aesthetic appeal, like some of these guys, like LeBron, for instance. I think, honestly, LeBron's bag, so to speak, has been highly underrated over the course of his career. But also, like, bully ball is the most effective and reliable form of scoring when you get to the later rounds of the playoffs. That's just a fact. And lastly, before we move on, like, the funniest thing to me is like the 16 dribble combination pull-up jump shot is also like one of the hardest things to play alongside as a teammate. Like it's a rhythm disruptor. And what's so funny is like all these guys, the Karl Malones, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars and LeBrons, their scoring came in a way that allowed other people to score well around them. And like, then you get these guys like Kyrie, or not, Kyrie's more lumped in with just the way that Dallas plays, but let's talk about Luka, for instance. Like Luka, like you have to put play finishers around him, because if you put other guys who can dribble, shoot, and pass around him, they would never be in rhythm because they'd be watching Luka take 17 dribbles on every single possession. And so, like, what's so funny is the specific type of style of scoring that he is referencing here is probably the kind that is like least, it has a value, but it's less valuable than the other forms of scoring that exist out there. Okay, next one. This is not a quote, but it's come from several Miami Heat players. So I'm just going to kind of reference it vaguely. We'll start with you, Carson. A few Miami Heat players have said that Chris Bosh was the most important player on the Heatles because he was a stretch big, even though he was on the same team with LeBron James. What's your reaction?
Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. That's a classic case of people galaxy brain and things and making things more complicated than they are. I don't really have a bunch to say. I mean, LeBron was clearly the best player on the planet in both Miami title years, and just an absolute fulcrum, both offensively and defensively. His versatility in Miami was the best of his career. His ability to play multiple styles. Like, I think the super heliocentric, ball dominant LeBron that we got in the second Cleveland stint, like his mastery of the game intellectually was incredibly impressive, but his ability to play off ball as well in Miami with just that sort of freak athleticism. I mean, the best combination of his explosiveness from those first Cleveland years and his strength. And then he was at his defensive peak. I mean, LeBron was at one of the highest peaks we've ever seen from a basketball player ever. And so I'm very happy that Chris Bosh was able to stretch the floor. And obviously he was a very good basketball player, but you take LeBron off those teams, you see what happens like in the subsequent years. And obviously D Wade had diminished at that point, and Chris Bosh obviously had all of his health issues, but like they were an okay playoff team after LeBron left. And I think it's very obvious that they would not have been contending. And it's like giving Iggy the finals MVP in 2015. Sometimes we look at people maybe exceeding their value or doing one specific thing that is super valuable. Oh my God, he guarded LeBron and he shot the ball really well, and we want to reward that. But it's like, who would you not be with who would you not be there in the first place if you didn't have, well, maybe it's Steph Curry, the guy who completely changed modern NBA offense and drove all the Warriors' success on that side of the ball. So I think that's a very silly take.
I mean, credit to Chris Bosh for grabbing one of the most important rebounds in NBA history, but yeah, I just completely disagree with this one. I'll give Chris Bosh credit for doing another thing too. I think it's important too when you have that accumulation of talent, when you have two bona fide guys who are maybe the best players on the planet. It takes sacrifice. You know what I mean? Chris Bosh had to sacrifice his role, his numbers, his view of his stance as a player in the league, legacy wise, to go win championships. That's what championships take. Sacrifice from guys, taking a lesser role and doing that role to perfection. And I'll give Chris Bosh a ton of credit for doing that and being a really underrated player. I think he's probably underrated now, especially, combined with the fact that he took a lesser role and the fact that, his career was shortened because of blood clot issues. That's got to be one of the most hyperbolic takes or ridiculous. Like, what are we doing here, man? I mean, that version of LeBron's one of the greatest players ever.
Yeah, for the record, love Chris Bosh, a guy that I think was underrated in a lot of ways because he wasn't the same kind of like scoring force that he was in Toronto, but like his willingness to embrace a role, specifically as essentially a defensive-minded stretch big for Miami, was massively important to that team reaching its ceiling. Basically, as long as he wasn't going against Tim Duncan, he was a very, very good defensive player. And towards the end in 2013 and 2014, his ability to knock down the three-point shot in particular was massively important. That said, LeBron James, if you literally just went up to him in that time and was like, hey, just do all the stuff Chris Bosh does for it, he would do better than Chris Bosh does at that stuff. He was a better shooter. He's a better rim protector. He's better. Like literally LeBron James was better at being Chris Bosh than Chris Bosh was at being Chris Bosh. That's how freaking good LeBron was in that time frame. So like, it's just completely ridiculous. For the record, I'm a big believer in like roster holes and value. Like it's kind of like we talked about with Jared Vanderbilt earlier, because Chris Bosh was like the one big they had that was skilled enough offensively to space the floor. He certainly was valuable, more valuable like I would say he's more valuable than you would think given his skill set because of what that team needed. But again, that's not Galaxy Brandon, it's LeBron James. All right, Logan, you're up next. Lance Stevenson. Quote, my favorite player right now is Anthony Edwards. He reminds me of me with the super green light.
Oh my God.
What is your response when you hear that quote?
That could only come from Lance Stevenson. Wow. Who does Lance Stevenson think he was?
Anthony Edwards without a super green light, bro.
I mean, yeah, I don't really have anything for that one, man. What did Lance Stevenson ever do? He had a couple good.
That's the point.
He had a couple good playoff runs, man. I like Lance too, dude. He was a good. When I was a kid, dude, those Pacers teams were some of my. I loved watching that team grow up. I hated the Heat so much as a kid, man. Watching those Pacers teams, Danny Granger, Roy Hibbert, Paul George, David West. Those were awesome teams to watch, man. And I died a little inside watching them get just crushed in the Eastern Conference Finals, those heartbreaking final games. And Lance Stevenson was a cool deterrent, blowing in the ear, pissing off LeBron a little bit. I liked Lance a lot, man. Zero comp. There's zero there's zero comp for that, man. That's wow, dude. Lance is in the G League right now. Like, Lance, what are you talking about, man?
Is that what he's doing? He's playing in the G League right now.
What is he talking about?
Grinder.
So there's still hope. He just needs that green light.
This is a good take. This is a good take from Lance. And we must not forget that in the 2014 season, he had 5 triple-doubles back when that really meant something. Before the triple-double had been devalued by these modern stat-padding big guards. I love this from Lance, dude. It seems like everybody wants to be Ant these days. Ant definitely has an aesthetic that I think captivates a lot of people. Personality, play style, his athleticism, obviously. And you know what, Lance? If that's what you want to believe, man, then you go right ahead and believe it.
I'm a huge Lance Stevenson fan. Obviously he had his limitations as a player, but he was just fun and he was good for the league. And like his battles with LeBron were fun. He even had like that fun phase with LeBron with the Lakers in that 2019 season where like obviously he wasn't a super high level contributor for them consistently, but he had his moments there where like he hit some big shots and danced for the crowd and that sort of thing. To me, it's just a classic case of like Lance is a supreme confidence guy. And so I'd be surprised if he didn't feel this way about himself. It's the identity that carried him to the NBA. And so I actually respect it. Next one. This one is for you, Carson, to start. From our colleague, Gilbert Arenas, who obviously we love Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas was a foundational part of my basketball experience growing up as a LeBron fan. Those of you guys who remember LeBron with the Cavs, it was those battles with the Wizards early on. I also think he's one of the most talented people in the sports media space. That said, had a take that I don't necessarily agree with. I shouldn't say I don't necessarily agree with. I vehemently disagree with. There's two phases to this one. The first, quote, the NBA took away aggression to open up the EuroLeague. When they first started getting here, it was too rough for them and they didn't make it. So eventually they softened the rules to open up international. And then later on, I know what they can do, Arena said. Get rid of all the Europeans. Some of his colleagues burst into laughter at the absurd idea, but Arenas appeared to be completely serious. You go to college to learn defense, Arenas continued. What college did Europeans go to? They don't go to college whatsoever. They have no athleticism. They have no speed, no jumping ability. They are a liability on defense. There's 150 Euros in the league today. Name the top 10 defenders. None. Just Rudy Gobert and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Other than that, they're just offensive players. They're not defensive players. What was your feeling on that position taken by Gilbert Arenas, Carson?
Yeah, this is a real for the books level bad take. Really bordering on some genuine xenophobia. Like that's some pretty wild stuff at the end there. And it's just totally unjustified. Like I don't understand the notion that they, quote, took the physicality out of the NBA for these European players, when if you look at the best European players right now, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, are those not three of the most brute force physical players in the NBA, period? And by the way, like the EuroLeague is a more physical league. They allow more physicality defensively. So I think there was this long-held reputation of European players as being soft in the NBA that I just don't think is substantiated. And obviously, the point about a lack of athletes is not true. The point about a lack of defenders is not true. And we are continually seeing more and more great European talents who don't look the same. Like obviously Luka and Jokic are not in the traditional mold of like a great NBA athlete. I think it's cool to watch guys who find ways to succeed in spite of that. And they have their all-time special traits. But like we have dudes coming up in this draft, Risa Shea, Sar, like these dudes may be the top 2 picks in the draft, Nikola Topic, all of these guys, Europeans from over the continent with different play styles. I just think Gil missed on this one big time. Europeans are dominating the NBA right now and are going to continue to do so for good reason, and it's because they're really, really, really good at basketball.
Yeah, I have immense respect for Gilbert Arenas. He was my favorite player growing up. I have a Gilbert Arenas jersey hanging up in my room right now. I love Gil, man. My guy, Washington. You know, I mean, when I was a kid watching ball, he was kind of the star on the East Coast. He was all the DC had. I love Gil. I just fundamentally disagree with the EuroLeague part, especially about the physicality and also the readiness that these guys come into the league to. You're playing against grown men from day one that are physical, that also know how to play the game. Like they play a unselfish, beautiful brand of basketball. And the physical part, I think the physical part has a lot more to do with the referees than anything than you pointing to like a certain group of people that play in the league now. I don't understand that one at all. And this is a tangent, guys. I know it's off, but also, man, dude, refs really don't know what they're watching, man. Did you guys see the Kansas?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, dude.
The block at the end.
Sucked.
I mean, how do you play? I just play pickup basketball, man. But it's like, dude, like these refs, I think we need to do one of two things with the refs. They either need to mandatorily play like an off season of basketball where they play like pickup games against other refs so we can give them real basketball experience.
I love this idea.
We need to fine them. and we need to take money out of their pockets for making bad calls.
Hold on. That was a real heat of the moment, very quick bang bang play that he missed. That wasn't a misunderstanding of basketball rules.
I agree.
Like that was an
odd basketball moment. You don't normally see a clean block at the rim like that, and then right, just the way that his momentum is, the way that he fell. It was unclear in the moment. They should just have a review system that they can trigger in college.
And that was also
your point about the actual officiating in the big picture, I agree with, but I agree with Carson in the sense that like that's a call that like if it's not a surprise.
Yeah, in the moment you think he hit him from behind. That's what happens most of the time. He's trailing the play. It's a really hard play. He made it.
I don't know. The ref on the left hash seemed like he had a really good vantage point of the ball.
Logan is really pissed about the Sanford Kansas.
He's going down with the ship on this one.
As a basketball fan, as a guy who enjoys playing basketball, that just it just makes your heart sink, man. When a guy makes such to take that moment away from that kid, it just hurt me as a fan. You know what I mean? You live for moments like those as a player, and as a chase down block in an NCAA tournament game.
What does this have to do with Europeans in the NBA?
It doesn't. Refs suck. Refs blow games. Refs need to play basketball and learn how the game works. I was disappointed. I think the physicality aspect is a ref issue and not a European issue, man. That's also ridiculous to me.
So I am gonna go. Because you guys have hit most of the notes on this Arenas thing. I'm just gonna hit you guys with my take on why foreign basketball players are taking over the NBA. I think it's an indictment of our basketball development at all levels. I think starting from, I've seen it personally with AAU coaches and just in general as we work up through the system. I think that we are doing a poor job of training basketball players at all levels. I think that there's way too much of a focus on on-ball development as it pertains to like dribble combinations and footwork, which by the way, I think is a monumentally important part of player development. It's something that I specifically do for my basketball team that I coach. That said, that is a tool to use during the flow of basketball games. But the flow of basketball games has so much more to do with learning how to play the game. And I don't think that we do a good enough job of that specifically. And I talk a lot about low-hanging fruit in the NBA. And what I mean by that is like I look at high level skill development as a margin improver, as a ceiling raiser. I look at the low hanging fruit as the actual meat and potatoes of basketball games. And I think that's why I'm such a huge fan of Denver. I think Denver is one of the all time great low hanging fruit teams. They will make tough shots, but they're going to get all the easy ones that they can find in a game. And I think in general, honestly, like Gilbert had a reference to college. Honestly, I think overseas guys are getting exposed to professional basketball earlier, and that helps a lot. And they're playing with grown men earlier, and they're learning higher level basketball concepts earlier. And I think in general, like there's hope. Anthony Edwards is a major hope. Obviously, Jayson Tatum's development is something to keep an eye on. But like we're in a situation now where like the best players that are coming out of America are just not as good as the best players that are coming out from the rest of the world. And I think if this trend continues and if here in America we can't kind of like revamp some of our basketball development, I think we could be in a situation in 15, 20 years where Team USA is no longer the favorite to win when we go into these overseas competitions. As of right now, I still think the US has a big edge just because of when everyone is healthy and they actually all go play. I think we'll learn that this summer. I think the LeBron, AD, Tatum, KD, Steph group is going to run roughshod over the rest of the world. But a lot of those guys are older, and the day and age of getting consistent, top 5 type of prospects coming out of America is fading. And I just, honestly, like I just hope we can figure it out sooner than later, because I do think that there's some truth to Gilbert Arenas talking about the quality of the athletic gifts that we produce here from our American basketball players. We produce some incredible prospects, but we're just not developing them well enough. And I hope that we can figure that out over the years. All right, 2 more, and then we're out of here, starting with you, Logan. This is from Nate Jones, an NBA agent. I actually think League Pass is a net negative for the NBA. Too much access to games has made games carry less weight/meaning. I think if you're going to have League Pass, it should be very expensive, except for maybe 1 or 2 days a week. What's your take?
Yeah, dude, let's charge all the NBA fans way more money to watch a basketball game. Dude, I hate that the NBA has fans, man. I hate that people watch the product. If you're going to have an issue with games carrying weight, why is it not a games played and scheduling argument instead of a viewership argument? I mean, for me, it's like baseball. I can't watch baseball, man. It's 162 games. I don't have time to keep up with what everybody's doing and who's hot here. And you know what? The reality of baseball is the only thing that matters is the final 2 months of the season when somebody's hot. So it's like, you know what I mean? I understand having an issue with maybe, they played too many games or, guys are tired and guys can't stay healthy. I understand that argument wholeheartedly. Yeah, man, let's charge the everyday NBA fan. Let's pinch all their pennies out of their pocket and make them pay an exorbitant amount of money to watch a basketball game. The real fans are going to watch. The fake fans aren't. It's really as simple as that. That's got to be one of the stupidest takes I've ever heard, man.
First of all, I just want to say I love this game. This is a lot of fun, but this is probably the single worst take I've seen this year just because it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, Logan hit on it. If you think that regular season games are devalued, which I think a lot of people think, shorten the regular season. If it's 72 games, if it's all the way to 58 games, the problem, of course, is that that's not financially viable for the league. So perhaps Nate Jones really, really likes the NBA, like the league itself, not the consumer, and really wants the NBA to profit the most because, like, that's the only logical explanation behind this take. Otherwise, I don't see why the burden would be on the people for something that is related to the product, the volume of the product. And I just love watching regular season basketball, so I'm not going to complain about the regular season being too long, even if 82 games, I do think is a bit excessive at this point. And obviously, the NFL has an advantage because it's a 17-game season. Every single game, the stakes, the weight of it is so significant, and they do such a great job of packaging it where you can sit down one day, watch it all day, and then you're totally in tune with what's going on in the league. That's great. That's why the NFL is king. I think it's a big reason. But the NBA can't replicate that. You couldn't, with a 17-game sample size, have like an appropriate regular season in the NBA, obviously. And so you operate within the reality, which is it's a longer season. There's some lulls, but it's a lot of fun. You get to watch a lot of good basketball. And hopefully, unless Nate Jones is put in charge, you don't have to pay $1,000 on a Tuesday night to watch Mavs Pels. I'd rather not, personally.
He's like Rob Lowe wearing the NFL shield hat.
Yeah,
like
he's the anti-Robin Hood.
Stan of the league.
He is a league stan.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that it's like, you know what? We have this issue. Not enough people are watching the NBA. So you know what we should do is make it so that they can't watch the NBA. Like I'm a big believer in shortening the NBA regular season, but yeah, that was a tough one for me. All right, last one before we get out of here, coming to you, Logan. This is from a LeBron stan on Twitter. Your opinion on LeBron as a player and a person should be the number one question on every job interview or first date. Because to really believe that your hatred or even deep dislike for him is justified is a telltale sign of who you are and how you perceive the world. Carson, I know that you are happily in a relationship right now, but let's pretend that you're single and you're out there dating. Let's just flip it around for you. If this person that you sit down for a date with does not think that Jokic is the best offensive player of this generation, do you immediately walk away from the table?
Get him out of there. No, I think this speaks to a very deep emerging issue, which we were talking about before we started recording, which is that NBA stan culture is just completely out of control. And I think people make their entire identities about these basketball players who ultimately have no idea they exist. And like, I love basketball, dude, and I am passionate about basketball, and I'm passionate about my opinions about a bunch of careers of these different guys. But I think it's much healthier to make it about the basketball players and not to pretend you have an intimate knowledge of LeBron as a person, because you don't. You know how LeBron presents himself to the public, and I do think he presents himself positively. And I do think people who think that LeBron is vile and hate LeBron, maybe that does speak to something a little bit wacky with them, or maybe something wrong with them. But I also think if you believe that you know exactly who LeBron is and you dedicate your life to loving LeBron, you probably want to look yourself in the mirror as well. And I would not lead job interviews. I would not lead dates. I would not lead anything with how do you feel about LeBron James? If you answer this incorrectly, I think you are a bad person.
I mean, Rick Carlisle's go-to first question on a date was, "Can you guard out of the pick and roll?" And I mean, he's got a great point.
It's true.
I think it matters for this guy because I think we finally found the dude with the LeBron bed sheets. So if she says no immediately, it's like, well, dang, man, we can't even go back now. It's over. I can't even show her my room. Yeah, man. I think that's how we should start all conversations. I think you pick your niche basketball player that you really like. You gauge their opinion. It's like, hey, girl, you really like Dante Exum? Well, what do you think about Dante Exum as a role player for the Mavs? And then you should base everything off that. Do people really love LeBron, man? That's kind of creepy. That's kind of weird, man.
Carson hit it. It's a trend for all of the players. Mm-hmm. Like whether it's Steph, there's more of them for certain players than others. Jokic is building a significant stand base. Giannis has a pretty sizable stand base as well. But yeah, like it's crazy. I just imagine because it's crazy because there's these people, they literally wake up every morning and then they just fight the fight. They fight the good fight from 9 to 5 every single day. I just imagine like Gerald Broflovsky in South Park when he's being an internet troll, just like kind of cracking his knuckles and he's like, all right, here we go. Legacy time, but like specifically, yeah, it's funny because like I'm LeBron is the person that got me to fall in love with the game of basketball. He's my favorite player of all time. God knows that I view him with great regard in terms of my list all time too. I have him just a hair behind MJ. But like LeBron fans hate me because they think I give him an unfair shake. And that really should tell you all you need to know about how that kind of culture has gone. And I 100% agree with you. I think it's bad for the discourse of the game. I think we all get dumber because of it. I think in general, it's bizarre and weird. Totally. I think being a fan of a player is totally normal, but like taking it to that point, I think is something that I think is bizarre. But at the same time, I think it's here to stay because it's only been getting worse and worse over the years, and it's just a big part of the way the game is discussed these days. And just get ready because Wemby's going to have a huge stand base, and Luka has a big stand base as well. It's just and it's funny when you talk to these people, like they all think that their guy's the best in the world. Like every Luka fan, for instance, is just thoroughly convinced that he's better than Jokic, and that every Giannis fan right now thinks that he's being completely disregarded, and that's what it becomes, and it almost takes on like a political type of vibe where it's like you better take the company line, otherwise screw you, and that's where it gets super bizarre. All right, we've been going for over an hour. This was fun though. I really enjoyed this. We're going to have you guys on again before the end of the season to do some sort of playoff preview. I think that would be fun. But Carson, why don't you take a second to shout out some of the stuff you guys have been working on as
Absolutely.
of late?
Well, first of all, as always, had a blast. Appreciate you having us on, Jayson. We are cranking out 3 shows a week. We're very much focused on the NBA right now, so you can find all of that at our YouTube channel, just the Nerd Sesh YouTube channel. You can also listen across audio platforms. And then we are doing some more intensive video breakdowns, 10, 12-minute video essay style stuff on specific NBA topics. I'm trying to do one of those every single week, so those are also on our YouTube channel. And then if you want to check out some of the trivia stuff that we do on the NBA and the NFL, a little bit of March Madness stuff too right now, given that that's going on, that's across our socials, specifically on TikTok at Nerd Sesh.
Carson, Logan, love having you guys on. This was a ton of fun. We have a show. I'm headed out of town from Sunday morning through Thursday morning, but when I get back on Thursday, we have there's a big game on Wednesday night. I can't remember exactly what it is, but we'll be covering that one. So I will be back on Thursday. I will see you guys then. As always, I appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend.